Well, Mr. Jones, thanks so much for joining us here today. I really appreciate your time out of your busy schedule. We know it's been about 5 years since the death of your nephew, George Floyd. What has the nation learned in that time?
A lot of people's eyes had to be open, because a lot of people didn't believe that there was police brutality. They didn't believe that there was systemic racism. They didn't believe that there were racial biases. And on May the 25th, 2020, all of those things came out in the middle of the street. At 8:26 and 15 seconds, the world had a situation to deal with, and the world dealt with it in unity. The whole world said my big sister's baby boy's name, and they came to our aid, and we were able to make progress with that day being so impactful. And it is still, we're still fighting today, dear. There's been more deaths after George than before George. So sometimes it seems like, wow, man, what are we doing? Are we ever going to make a difference? Well, guess what? If you don't try, if you don't start, you'll never finish. And this isn't about a short game, dear, because these things have been going on for hundreds and hundreds of years. We just had an opportunity to have our situation videoed so the world can see what power and control looks like.
And you mentioned that afterwards, after that happened, there was an uproar of unity, an uproar of protest, so many people speaking out on this. But in the past 5 years, do you believe that our country has done enough to promote civil rights?
Dear, everybody knows about civil rights. Our country needs to respect the fact that they are differences. Our country needs to move forward into trying to correct some of those differences. Because I promise you, if me and you went into a store, you should be more looked at than I am, but I would be looked at more because of the potential thoughts of me doing something mischievous. And that's sad when we have to live through that situation at this time in life.
And after Mr. Floyd's death, as you mentioned earlier, there have still been police brutality situations that we've heard of. Still seems to be a hot topic. Did this incident, did it elevate that conversation? And is that conversation still being elevated enough?
Dear, certain things have happened at an alarming continuous rate over the last 400 or 500 years that it's still elevated, but there's been a pendulum swing. People went from being mad and angry to some people wanting to protect themselves. And I don't see us winning from that. I see mental health counseling helping. I feel stricter hiring practices help. As far as change, every day we have hope. And I hope every day things get better. But reality is, I think we're still at a point where people are using more emotions than they're using tact. And when emotional gets involved, that's when chaotic situations happen. Can you assess a particular situation with a stable decision to do or don't? And when you're put in a stressful situation, dear, I would hate to have to make that situation. But it unfortunately seems like they make the one that impacts everybody more. And that's one of the problems that I have. You know, everything that you touch doesn't have to be terminated or doesn't have to be uh, destroyed or hurt to eliminate the threat. So, yeah, just a lot of mental health crises that just bother me. You know, I was in Boston yesterday, and I was standing with 18 guys, and out of 18 people, they have served over 430 years of prison time, and they were wrongfully convicted.
Um,
Yeah.
and stories like that, I'm sure stick with you. And going back to May 25th of 2020, that's a day that so many of us who were alive will remember, will naturally stick with us. But there will be generations to come that weren't alive to see that weren't alive to see those protests and that conversation. But you're focused through your organization, Justice 929, and also through the Myth app of keeping that fight alive and teaching, younger generations, all generations, about this story, about the stories that you've witnessed. I mean, just as you said yesterday, seeing people that have been wrongfully convicted. Can you tell us more about Justice 929 and the Myth app?
Justice 929 was an organization that obviously comes to 9 minutes and 29 seconds. That's the time that my nephew was lying on the ground.
Mm.
All I want to do is to give people an opportunity to be whole. There's so much homelessness, uh, sex trafficking, domestic violence. All of these chaotic things happen on a daily basis. There's over 4,000 people a day that gets missing. There's 750,000 people that'll walk out the door and you'll never see again. Well, me and one of my partners out of LA created an app, and we call it Myth. And what Myth is a interactive app. You download 3 of your emergency contacts, and if something happens and you are in a panic situation, you can hit the panic button. What it will automatically do is call your emergency contacts. They'll have GPS for you. We store the video in our own server, so it cannot be distorted, it cannot be lost, it cannot be hidden. And you have no idea how many situations that we've heard of people going to get their body cam video and it's non-existent. Well, all of these things we want to change in our community. You're playing at a park and a young lady see some dude across the street that doesn't look right. Hit the Myth app. It'll contact your emergency contacts. You have an opportunity to be safe. We want to create better communities. We want to have safer spaces, definitely for young ladies, because that trafficked and missed and murdered indigenous that strikes me because I live in South Dakota. So, and my statement is this: what can't the Myth app do to have a layer of protection? There's nothing it can't do. You go fishing, you get hurt, panic button. So all I'm trying to do, dear, is figure out something from a bad situation that's going to make the world a safer and a better place.
Absolutely. What a powerful tool to exist, and what a gift that we have technology
Oh, yes.
to make that possible.
Yep.
And looking at the bigger picture of this, looking from a futuristic mindset, what is still left to do to make our community safer?
Communicate, conversate, and inspire. You have to educate people because there were so many people, dear, that had 2 options. They could read, but they didn't want to read. And for 9 minutes and 29 seconds, it was stuck in your face. The book was open and the script was read to you. police brutality, racism, hatred, disdain for an individual because of how he is, what he is. No matter whether it's addiction or mental health issues, they're all put in that mental health crisis situation. If you were not on alcohol, if you were not on alcohol, you'd be able to make those conscious decisions. If you were not affected by some kind of addictive substance, you could make that right decision. So, dear, stop building prisons and let's get some more mental health institutions built because there's a lot of people that got stories, and there's a lot of people stories need to be heard, and there's quite a few of them that need to be fixed.
And how do you think, lastly, just to wrap up this interview today, how do you think your nephew would want us to remember his story today?
I didn't want to go, but if I had to go to make this much of a uproar about my death to make change, I'm good with it. I look at it this way, dear. Chauvin was not supposed to come to work that day. Donella Frazier never walked her cousin down to that store because it was a gang-related neighborhood. And why would my nephew allegedly commit a crime with $19 and 100 pennies, walk 70 feet across the street and go to sleep? I contribute all of this to it was God's mission to wake people up. And the Lord knew that my nephew had a good heart and a good soul. He just had a demon that haunted him. He could have let him go any other place, but he said, no, I know he's got a good heart. I know he's got a good soul. I know he's got good intentions, but unfortunately, they didn't work out. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to give him a death, and I'm going to make everybody pay attention and how things are. And that's the reason why we're here today.
Mr. Jones, thank you so much for your powerful words today. I appreciate your time, and it's been an honor speaking with you.